Hey everybody, Robert Dunt, ArtTop10.com, and we're here at the Royal Academy today at the Angelica Kauffman press view. She was one of the most celebrated artists of the late 18th century, described by contemporaries as the most cultivated woman in Europe. Intriguingly enough, she spent quite a long time in England. She was one of the only two women artists to be a founding member of the Royal Academy of Arts, which is quite intriguing. I think she was born in 1741. So I guess the Royal Academy is like trying to rescue her. I guess she's been lost and obscured by all the male people you've had. So this is an attempt to bring her back to some kind of knowledge, in line with a lot of other Royal Academy exhibitions at the moment, which is all a good thing, isn't it? Right. So you've got a slightly bizarre self-portrait over there, dressed sort of as Rembrandt, I would have said. But, and then that seems to be a self-portrait of her. Oh, that's her in a dress, which is fine. And then there's loads of pictures with her holding a stylus, which is kind of cool. It feels very kind of Rembrandt-y, those sort of little weird piercing eyes. It's fine. And then she seemed to move from Italy to England. As a woman, she couldn't formally enroll at an academy, but with her artist father studied classical sculpture and works the old masters. She seemed to do history paintings, and then I think when she moved to Britain, she basically started doing more like portraits of people, became known more as a portrait painter. So you got like Johann there, or it's got a good dog in that picture there. It's just trying to look at these things. It's not quite as... I still think it's got a Rembrandt vibe to it, although it's not quite, the paint's not as thickly placed over the rest of it, and then sort of glazed. Good dog though. I quite like this portrait of David Garrick. That manages to pick up a good vibe of him with his hands. His hands look like they're bruised and battered, which is quite intriguing. It was the time he was the most famous playwright and actor. Sat for this portrait while he was visiting Naples. Kauffman sent it to be exhibited at the Royal Academy, where the acclaimed received acted as a calling card ahead of her arrival in London. Interesting. Yeah, it does show him quite a real pose. Actually, I suppose that is one good thing about these pictures. You have got Garrick there in quite a sort of realistic way. He looks like a human. He's not too stylized or unreal. Whereas, this one's more like one of those unreal pictures you'd get when you've got this woman in Turkish dress with embroidery frame. I like the dress though. The dress is kind of cool. It's got really nice lacy bits on that dress down there. And then we come back over here to these more kind of classical ones, which, I don't know, can't tell if I've seen some of these before at the moment. This one here looks like a painting I've seen before, but I just can't remember if I have or haven't. Can't tell if these are Kenwood House. But I think what's probably most interesting about here, if we're sticking with the review and discussing what's happening, is this one here of Cleopatra. This painting of Cleopatra is actually quite interesting, where she's Cleopatra is adorning the tomb of Mark Antony. So instead of showing Cleopatra as some sort of mega, person in charge, some star, she's shown as like a more normal human, just privately grieving, which is, so that's generally quite interesting, that slightly more subtle, gentle way of discussing the people. That's quite interesting. I've got to say, I don't think the paintings are stunning, frankly. And they're not bad at all. It's difficult to say. They're like fine, which sounds mean. They're not. I don't know. Maybe we've just seen too many of these things to be blown away by it. But they're fine. But I do quite like that. That portrait of Garrick is really good, and I like the thing about the tomb of Cleopatra. Those things are good. Anyway, let's stroll on, see what happens in the next room. We're not doing a full review of this. I'm specifically told I can't film the whole exhibition. As they tell me every time I turn up at the Royal Academy, and so we're just trying to do a review. So if there's stuff I don't show you, I'm sorry, it's not my fault. So let's keep going. So there's quite an interesting picture here that we can't really show you because it's installation view only, which is where she depicts herself between art and music, like a sort of crossroads in her career or life when she was trying to decide to be a painter or an artist, based on a painting, intriguingly enough, that story of Hercules at the Crossroads, where he was presented with a choice between a life of vice or one of virtue. Intriguingly enough, she was a gifted singer and clavichord player, but she decided to abandon her musical career to devote herself entirely to painting, which is quite intriguing. It's actually probably one of the best paintings, that one, but we can't really properly look at it. We can just have a little glimpse. So I can only really give you an installation shot of the picture I was just talking about, but you can just see it there on the back wall. But it's probably one of the best paintings here, actually. It's rather nice, colours quite striking. It gives you a little vibe of the whole room as we look round. Quite a lot of people here at the press view, a lot more than I thought there would be. It's actually quite interesting, just like the John Singer Sargent exhibition we went to last week. You got quite a lot of people here. She's painted them dressed up in their sort of outfits. So this one we're just whispering past here was Lady Hamilton as Muse of Comedy. She was well known for performing a series of attitudes imitating the poses of classical figures. So this highlights her theatrical talents, capturing her stepping on a stage transformed into Thalia, the Muse of Comedy, which is signified by the laughing mask she's holding. So these are actually quite good. I'd say they're a lot better than the paintings in the first room, actually. They're sort of quite fun, almost more like pictures of her own life and everybody messing around, getting dressed up, and then she's sort of frozen them in the paintings. They're actually quite good, those pictures. This must be something similar. Oh yeah, Muses of Tragedy and Comedy. It's quite an interesting insight, much like the Singer Sargent thing, into how everybody would dress up. It's a weird thing. We don't really go in. Well, I suppose we do go in for dressing up, don't we? We like Halloween and dressing up as superheroes and stuff. Oh yeah, so she was still getting clients for her lively portraits once she'd returned to Italy. Such as this guy who was an architect. Oh yeah, and he's holding his little sort of architect piece of paper there, which is quite fun. And then weirdly enough on the other side, you've still got these kind of like classical... I don't find these classical things so effective. Can't quite tell if they're copies. But you've got all those sort of the reds and the yellows and the progression of colours through it, but they seem a bit more stilted, a bit more controlled. They seem a bit more kind of Ulysses on the island of Circe, is this one we can whip past behind me. They don't seem quite as emotive as the other ones. This Christ and the Samaritan Woman's not so bad. Which was not well known for her religious works. I think it's actually quite good, that picture. It actually looks, again, that I would say works towards her sort of successes, which is when there's a kind of really good human element in it. Because that actually looks really human. Those two look very human as they engage with each other. It's sort of like the reality of Jesus as a human. And he looks like people you could know. It's actually quite good, that painting. It's really quite interesting. Okay. I think just as sort of not just for the point of reviewing, I think it's just saying she moved back to Rome. She moved back to Rome as an established artist and settled in Rome. Those are the ones are her history paintings, the one I don't like so much. Ambitious in tone, featuring complex compositions. Interesting. I don't think they're as effective as the other paintings. She does all these weird self-portraits as well. She was also doing self-portraits as a character of design. It's quite fascinating how they keep dressing themselves up as different people in these things. And she's always holding a stylus. It's almost like her sort of calling card. Anyway, let's keep on roaming. So in 1768, she was one of the only two women artists among the 36 founding members of the Royal Academy, which is intriguing. There's this absolutely fantastic painting here. It's so funny, where she's chatting. She's quite interesting how she paints herself into a lot of these pictures. I think this is where this is 7, I think, of the most intellectual and creative women in the 18th century, which is really interesting actually to see all them in the picture. But she's always painting herself into these pictures, a bit like Alfred Hitchcock, always appearing in his films, which is kind of cool and quite entertaining, frankly. What I didn't realise is absolutely extraordinary, that the Royal Academy sought to raise the professional status of artists through promotion of history painting, which is absolutely bizarre. I had no idea about that. Kauffman was an ideal candidate for membership. Her swift acceptance in the inner circles of London art was supported by the important connections she made. Notably, Joshua Reynolds, one of the founding member of the Royal Academy, and that comes from a pub quiz. What I did think was interesting actually is that I didn't realise that also she obviously was doing cracking well. And was really famous. Showed 7 of her own paintings at the RA exhibition, celebrated as living muse in this painting we were just talking about. And also her 4 ceiling paintings depicting the elements of art were unveiled in the Academy's new rooms at Somerset House. It's quite weird. I didn't realise the Royal Academy was at Somerset House either. I don't think we can really show you those 4 things that were on the ceiling. I have a feeling we're not allowed to do those. We can creep over to this corner though. Self-portrait of a bust of Minerva. That's weird. Oh, she's done a self-portrait of herself. I think we can show both these things. She's done a self-portrait of herself with a bust of Minerva, just like Joshua Reynolds did. That's really cool. Artistic dialogue with Joshua Reynolds. Minerva features in the same position as the bust of Michelangelo in this grand self-portrait. Reynolds, in turn, had taken this motif from Kauffman's portrayal of him in 1767. Intriguing. Quite like these pictures are quite nice actually. I think they're quite like the oval shape actually. They've got quite a nice sort of gentle vibe to them. What are these? Design. Oh, I think these must be. I think they're meant to be dressed as design. Oh, so I think the high point of her career was a commission for a set of ceiling paintings. The elements of art represent the key stages in creating an artwork. It's not quite clear whether these are them or not. I can't work it out. Because there are meant to be 4. There's 2 here. The figure of design draws the famous Belvedere torso. Oh, a plaster cast which was available in the Royal Academy's rooms. So that's quite interesting. That plaster cast is something they had in the Royal Academy for people to work with. Quite intriguing. I'm still not quite sure if those are the 4 pictures that were in Somerset House or not. But anyway, I think that's the vibe of them. So this by Johann Zoffany, the academicians of the Royal Academy. It's actually quite interesting. In the centre you got Joshua Reynolds prancing around with his hands in the air. But intriguingly enough, the 2 women, Mary Moser and Angelica Kauffman, who are one of the, they were the 2 women who set up the Royal Academy with the other, how many was it? 36 founding members. Well, the 2 women among the 36 founding members. You can see all the other men here in the life room where you've got the nude models. But the 2 women, Angelica and Mary, were excluded from the life class on moral grounds, which is quite intriguing. But Zoffany managed to include them in the painting as portraits on the back wall. So it is interesting. It does show you the complications and hassles and ludicrous that Angelica and Mary would have had to deal with at that time. Intriguing, isn't it? Nowadays, probably most people think art is more of a sort of, I don't know. But interesting. I mean, most schools these days certainly push boys to do maths. They don't push them in anything creative and artistic. It is interesting, though, just like John Singer Sargent, I don't know, that she seems to have been quite a social butterfly. She obviously managed to get to know Joshua Reynolds really quickly after she got to London. It's quite interesting how they network themselves, how these artists are successful at networking themselves into meeting other people. And obviously that helps them do things like become a founding member of the Royal Academy. Because John Singer Sargent was always out and about, partying, playing the piano, sending people dresses. It's very, very interesting. Okay, so round up, quite short. It's only 3 rooms to the exhibition. It's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Wasn't too blown away with the paintings in the first room. Second and third, actually, I thought they're quite interesting. I do think she's got a very good sensitivity with painting things so they look like humans as opposed to things that aren't humans, not so much in the classical paintings, which I find a bit stilted, but I thought in the religious painting, that was very human. Garrick, that was very human, and Cleopatra Mourning, those are probably my three favourite paintings because of that sort of humanity she's brought into it that you don't necessarily get communicated in these older style paintings. And then I think some of these paintings have got a nice softness to the actual quality of the paint itself. I suppose we've seen so many paintings like this, it's hard to judge whether they're miraculous works or not. I mean, you've got nice colours in some of these things. I mean, you're going to be hard finding yourself up against Rembrandt because he was amazingly good at the subtlety of paint he used. But it is very interesting. I think it's actually really good they've brought her out, and it's interesting that she was one of the founding members, and it does show you the things that women have achieved in art that we overlook or don't get told about as they're not met, I guess. Anyway, a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Really enjoyed it. Interesting, definitely worth coming to have a look at. And as ever, if you want to see more interviews with artists or reviews of art exhibitions, please like and subscribe to the channel. Auf Wiedersehen, Bye bye.